You cannot be a Christian. You cannot win. You cannot serve God without recognizing that the way up is down. The way to gain favor with God Almighty is to submit yourself as a servant, endure whatever is necessary in the presentation of eternal truth that makes men free.
And now, the preaching of the gospel with James Watkins.
Last week, we generalized on the husband and his relationship to his wife and to the home. And we pointed up that that term husband is from two original words, house band. He circumscribes, he oversees, he undergirds. That is, the husband provides for the home. He provides, first of all, spiritual leadership, spiritual guidance, if indeed he is functioning as God designed marriage. And he is then responsible for the material welfare of the home. He provides financial support. He makes it as comfortable as possible for his family. I like the story of a young man who invited his boss to lunch one day. And as they pulled up to the house, he got out of the car, headed for the house. The young man said, "Just a moment." And he went over under a tree and made the motions of pulling off a coat or a vest, a jacket, and hung it over the limb. And his boss is standing there, dumbfounded. He said, "Excuse me." When the young man came back, they headed for the house. He said, what were you doing?" Young man said, "That's my trouble tree. I never bring my troubles to my family. I have an obligation here. I want to be the right kind of example to my wife and to my children." And so he said, "I hang my troubles on my trouble tree before I go in the house." Friends, that's delightful. That's good. The husband is thus responsible for the happiness and the welfare of the home. Oh, but let's talk for a few moments now about the wife and the home. Why was she created in the first place? Adam formed of the dust of the earth. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul, Genesis 2, verse 7. I mean, it would seem to me that God doing no shoddy work. Here's a perfect man in a perfect world. He has no needs at all. Why, God said it's not good that the man should be alone. I'll make him a help meet for him, one answering to his needs. Now, we've discussed this. We understand that man has a need that is not readily from an outward physical position recognized. Made in the image and the likeness of God, he is a spiritual creature, not primarily a physical man in a physical world. Sure, that's important and that plays a part, but that's not primary. He needed someone whom he could love, someone who would reciprocate that love. The wife was created to be a help, answering to his needs. And let me say this, there is nothing upon this earth that is a greater help or a more powerful means of support or a more sacrificial source of love than a good wife. There's no question about it. God knew exactly what he was doing when he created Eve to be the wife of Adam. You know, I generally say when he created beautiful Eve to be I had a lady one time somewhat rebuked me rather sharply. She said, "How do you know that Eve was beautiful?" Friend, I'm not talking about external beauty. Oh, sure, that's fine and that's important and it's an eye catcher, but that won't last, you see. That will fade. No, the beauty of a woman is expressed from her heart. It's not how she appears physically. Of course we want her to be attractive, and we appreciate that fact, but that's not primary. A marriage based upon physical attraction is doomed. It will not work. Oh, but a marriage based upon genuine beauty that stems from the heart of man and woman will last. There's no question. That's why Mother Eve was created for Adam, to supply his needs. And marriage is a heart-to-heart relationship. It is a genuine sacrificial love that is expressed one for the other. You know, the wise man said in Proverbs 18, verse 22, "Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of Jehovah." Well, there's no question about that. God knew exactly what man needed, otherwise he never would have created Eve. So when you find a wife, and of course that marriage is contracted on the proper basis, a genuine, selfless love, then you have found the source of your happiness for life. Oh, and in so doing, it is precious and pleasing in the sight of God. Obtaineth favor of Jehovah. A wonderful thing is a godly wife. As a matter of fact, a prudent wife is from Jehovah, is she not? Proverbs chapter 19, verse 24. The wise man said, "House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, but a prudent wife is from Jehovah." I need to be appreciative. I need to be grateful. I need to thank God regularly for the pleasant joy and happiness and fulfillment of a good wife. Oh, there is nothing like a good woman. Now, when you think about the duties of a wife, and that word duty is applicable to all men in every situation of life. We have responsibilities. That's what life's all about. We talked of that, did we not? Provided Eden, the perfection of that utopian state, and he told Adam, dress and keep the garden. Man, you need responsibility. You need something that will slow you down, that will cause you to be aware of your surroundings, that will make you conscious of individual responsibilities. Sure, we all have duties. What about the duty of the wife? Well, she is to be in subjection to her husband. Wives, be in subjection to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. That's verse 22 of Ephesians chapter 5. Now there again, you see, in our society, where we have lost sight of God's divine arrangement for man's happiness, and I use the term man's there in a generic sense, male and female. He provided marriage for our happiness. And if we aren't careful, losing sight of that, when the book says, wives, be in subjection to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord, many get the idea that means I'm to be enslaved, Friend, that has no such meaning at all. It is a provision for your contentment, your happiness, your welfare. That's why you were made in the first place. A help meet for man. And no, it doesn't make you inferior to man. Why, certainly not. We're not talking about superiority and inferiority. No, we're not dealing with employer and employee. We're not dealing with master and slave. We're talking about husband and wife and God's provision for their happiness. Now, it works only one way. Wife in subjection to her husband. Well, that's no problem. Didn't Peter talk about that over in 1 Peter chapter 3? If you were to begin at verse 3, he's speaking of the woman. He said, whose adorning, let it not be the outward adorning of braiding the hair, wearing jewels of gold, or putting on of apparel. Now, someone stops there and they say, you mean it's wrong for a woman to wear jewelry? Well, certainly not. If it were, it'd be wrong for her to wear clothing. He said, whose adorning, let it not be the outward adorning of braiding the hair, wearing jewels of gold, or putting on of apparel. What's he doing? He's making a contrast. He is telling the woman, as he has told the man, where to place the emphasis. Not upon the outward physical appearance. Well, sure, that's fine. Nothing wrong. If you want your hair to be neat, you can wear jewels. You don't want to be gaudy about, but nothing wrong with wearing jewelry any more than there's anything wrong with putting on clothing, wearing apparel. And we want it to be neat. Sure, we want it to be attractive. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, but that's not where you place the emphasis. Who's adorning? Let it not be the outward adorning of braiding the hair, wearing jewels of gold, or putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart in the incorruptible apparel of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. For after this manner the women of old adorned themselves, being in subjection to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. Isn't that interesting? Now, there again, someone said, well, he's not Lord. He's... In her thinking, she loved him. He is the head of the house. He provides for her happiness and welfare. Oh, he provides the environment in which she, out of love, serves the family. That's what marriage is all about. You see, two people are involved, yes, but they become one. There's no question about that. Each one takes into consideration the desires, the happiness, the welfare, the needs of the other. That's the only way we make decisions in marriage. It considers both. As Jesus said, no longer two, but one flesh. There's just one woman in the world. That's that. Oh, we have a place for mom and others, but point is, we are now one flesh. Nothing is to be allowed to drive a wedge between the two. We are not from this point on to think independently, to exclude her from my plans. No. The husband takes his wife into consideration in everything that he does. He makes her a sharer, a part of his life, even in his recreational activities where such is desirable. Sure, you may do certain things that she doesn't particularly like. And she may shop in certain stores, and wives are shoppers, and you don't care to shop there. Fine. You may go to the hardware store while she's in the fabric shop. That's fine. But it's an agreement. It is an understanding. And this is what provides for the wife's happiness, a recognition of her importance in this relationship. You know, it's interesting. Paul said, I desire that the younger women marry, bear children, rule the household, give no occasion to the adversary for reviling. 1 Timothy chapter 5 at verse 14. What do you mean, Paul? Rule the household. Well, we've already learned that the husband is the head of the house. He oversees. That's right. He oversees the home. He's the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. Well, how does Christ exercise headship over the church? In love. The right kind of example and instruction. That's what the Lord does. But you know, when you come right down to the nitty-gritty of this thing of managing the home, that girl is right there in the middle of it, and she's right there all day. She is a worker at home. Titus 2, verse 4, the older women were to teach the younger women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be workers at home. Did you know one of our problems in America is that mother is out of the home? Now, let me say this. I know of no sin involved when a lady is working at public works. That's not the point. And I understand that if they're married and have no children, and it is agreeable, then of course she can work outside the home and engage in productive labor. However, there is no greater work that can be done in this world today than the work of a wife who becomes a mother within the framework of the home. That's one of our problems in America today. Children grow up and they become lovers of self, lovers of money, haughty, railers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection. Oh, you can read that. Paul expresses that, of course, to Timothy. But why does that come about? How is it a child grows to his majority without natural affection? Oh, natural affection is caught It's learned through our gradual development and maturation that occurs in a home where love is the dominating principle and mother is present. Sometimes we have children, and man, just the shortest time possible, we have to be with them, and then we turn them over to some person who is a nanny or cares for them, and that person may love them. There's no question about that. That's not to say that this person doesn't. No, but child needs its mother. A baby needs to be touched, held by its mother. There is a tie here that's found nowhere else. That billing and cooing, he needs to hear the voice of his mother. I know of a young lady, beautiful young lady, fine young wife, fairly recently married, and her husband wanted a particular automobile, and they're making good money, and that's fine. She's a school teacher, and he's in the military. As a matter of fact, he pilots a big C-17, and she told him, now, if you want that automobile, we need to get it now. While we can pay for it and we'll have no problem. But she said, when my first child comes, I'm staying home. I love that. Friend, that's Christianity, really. That's what life is all about. That is the meaning of parenthood. Husband and wife, no longer two but one flesh, and yet one is a woman, the other is a man. And in this relationship, there is the reproduction of the human family. Oh, and when a child comes into this whole world, that mother, most powerful influence in this world, make no mistake about it. A worker at home, right. She keeps, as it were, the house in every sense of the term. She knows what the needs are. She does her grocery shopping, or she may once in a while give the husband a list and say, well, isn't it fine? That's good. Oh, but somebody says, now I'm the head of the friend. Overseeing, right. Providing for, no question. Undergirding, yes. Protection, absolutely. Financial, oh, indeed. That's what the husband is all about. But within the framework of the home, this union, friend, is made up of two people who in marriage and the conjugal relationship assigned thereto have become one flesh. So then when we talk about the duties of a wife and the duties of a husband, oh, they differ. Oh, yes. Each has his or her sphere of activity. Oh, and that sphere of activity is in support of the other. That's what marriage is all about. Mama needs to be in the home. Now, woman is not inferior to man, certainly intellectually. Oh, she may not have the brute strength that some men have. And that's why the Apostle Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, and you husbands, you're to give honor to your wife as being the weaker vessel, to the end that your prayers be not hindered. What do you mean, Peter? You husbands, give honor unto your wives as unto the weaker vessel. Friends, she has her physical limitations, sure. And that's why when the housework becomes drudgery, or certain tasks that are repetitious would bother us. They don't bother her as much because she has a better understanding and capability and a lot more resiliency than the male does, and she handles it. But the husband needs to be aware of that, and he needs to relieve her. He needs to express that love that is reciprocated and from which she draws her strength. There's nothing in this world stronger than a godly woman. A man simply cannot do the work that a woman does. It's a different sphere of activity. So then, husband and wife, each having their areas of responsibility. And you know, the good wife, there are so many, many wonderful things that you could say about her. I remember that wise man, Solomon, in Proverbs 31, about verse 20, he speaks of the fact that she reaches out her hand to the needy. She stretches forth her hand to the poor. She looks well to the ways of her household. Yes, she arises while it is yet night, and gives food to her household and their tasks to her maidens. She is a diligent person, a wife who fears Jehovah, loves her husband and her family, is a worker beyond man's ability fully to comprehend. It is amazing, the patience, the resiliency that a good wife exhibits in her relationship to the home. There's no question about that. And what was that that Solomon said? Proverbs 31, verse 10. A worthy woman who can find, for her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusteth in her, and he shall have no lack of gain. She doeth him good and not evil all the days of her life. There is nothing more precious in this world than a good wife. It is a wonderful thing when you stop to think about a good wife. God provided this for our happiness, our productivity, our welfare. You know, the good wife teaches her children. Proverbs 22, verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. Now you say, well, preacher, you pointed out that's the man's responsibility. Indeed. In the oversight of the home, his example, his teaching, vital. But when you stop to think about the arrangement that God has provided for the development and the growth and the welfare of the home, mama is generally with those children, time-wise, more than dad. And she, over a period of time, a word here and a word there, her conduct instructs, solidifies, as it were, proper teaching in the hearts and the minds of her offspring. Train up a child in the way he should go. If mom is not in the home, she can't do that. And you know, many times today, and I have no words of vilification for ladies who work at public works. Why, certainly not. But I need to take into consideration, am I just working for extra cash, money, so that I can, have a broader portion of this world's goods? I mean, so that we can have a little extra. Friend, far more valuable than any additional funds that you may have in this world is the immortal soul of your child. Now that comes first. Am I neglecting my child? Am I allowing someone else to rear my child, to instill his or her values in the heart of my child? Am I doing them an injustice by not being present as their mother? Those are vital concerns. These are questions that need to be answered. If we aren't careful today, we have become a materialistic society, and we've forgotten the true values of life. And there is no substitute for mother in the home where young children are growing to their majority. They are forming the basis, the foundation upon which they will establish their lives. And Mom, they need you more than any other thing in this world at that time of maturity and formation. Mom needs to be in the home. No substitute. I can remember details as well as can you, I'm sure, of the circumstances in which there was the proper guidance from mother, and she always took into consideration my welfare, did not hesitate to spank me when I needed it, to correct my misconduct. And you know what's amazing? People say, well, parents shouldn't, discipline their children. They shouldn't spank their children. Friends, when they've been gone for many, many years, if they disciplined you because they wanted you to do the right thing, if they exhibited their love for you as they provided for and cared for you, then the correction of your misconduct is a part of the love that they exhibited. And because of that, you love them more. You see, that's what parenting is all about. That's what mama in the home is all about. It's wonderful, the provision that she makes for the happiness of her welfare, of the welfare of her family. I remember when we grew up, we were very poor, but my mother always took into consideration our limited funds, and she was ingenious in providing what we needed. It was amazing how she loved her family. Today, we're fragmented. We are splintered. We are scattered from one point to another. There is not the unity that should characterize the family or the home. And as we said initially earlier, that's one of the reasons why marriages are breaking up today. Yes, the husband has his place, Dad. The wife has her place, Mom. May God help us.
It has been a pleasure studying the Bible with you today. Would you be interested in learning more about God's Word? Well, we have a series of Bible lessons that you can study at home. Beautifully illustrated and based solely on the Bible, these studies can help you learn more about God's will for your life. Call us at 1-800-683-3120 or visit our website at preachingthegospeltv.com. While you're there, sign our guest book and let us know what you think of our program. You can email us at ptgwjw@aol.com or write to us at Preaching the Gospel, P.O. Box 1484, Dalton, Georgia 30722. Audio cassettes of today's lesson are available free of charge. Just contact us with this program number shown on your screen. Members of the Church of Christ in your area have paid for this program, and they would love for you to come and visit their services. If you need help locating a congregation in your area, or if you would like more information about the church described in the Bible, please contact us. Preaching the Gospel is under the oversight of the elders at the Highland Church of Christ in Dalton, Georgia. And now, back to James Watkins.
The wife, friend, when you say that word, you take into consideration the goodness of God, His tender mercies, His rich provision for our happiness and welfare. Sure, I'm aware that some people are single and seem to be fairly content, and their needs maybe are not such as is characteristic of the majority of men. But when you finally find someone upon whom your affections can be lavished, friends, there is no substitute for a good wife. And a good wife reciprocates the love of her husband, and that love is shown in her devotion, in her management of the home, and later, of course, as children come along, in her love and provision for her offspring. All of this has to do with the strength of the orderly, productive home. And the home is the foundation of an ongoing, law-abiding, productive society.
You can reach Preaching the Gospel by calling 1-800-683-3120. Be sure and join us next week at this same time for Preaching the Gospel with James Watkins.